Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the Solvable Mysteries podcast. My name is Juras, and as every week, I'm joined by my co host, Glenn. Hi, Kove. Man, how are you feeling, and how's everything on your end?
Here I am with brand new microphone. sound like AM radio maybe. Yeah, no, I just I know sometimes people leave comments that they wish that the sound was a little bit different. It's probably my mic that they're complaining about. So yeah, hopefully this sounds a little better today. But on the topic today, it was interesting because when I was doing the research and we're about to launch into this case, which strangely enough I'd not heard of at the time, it really made me think that this episode is a really interesting look at maybe the dangers of being stalked, and also how certain occupations have sort of maybe a an unknown or unpublicized like occupational hazard of having a higher than normal stalker danger. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I know what you
So
mean.
anyway, yeah. With that little tease, here we go.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Today we're going to be talking about the disappearance of Jodi Huisentruit. This case, I think was suggested by someone from our YouTube comment section. I've also never heard about this case, but to whomever suggested it, thank you very much, because it's an amazing and interesting case, and I can't wait to get into it. A little information before we start going is that this case has a lot of names and there are a lot of suspects because this was a highly publicized case in Iowa in the late 90s. Therefore, things might get confusing. I will try my best to make this as easy to follow along as possible for our audience members. All right, so I think without any further ado, let's jump into the case introduction. Jodi Huisentruit is an American woman who disappeared under mysterious circumstances in the early morning hours of June 27, 1995, after telling a colleague that she had overslept and was running late for work. When Jodi disappeared, she was 27 years of age. She is 5'3" in height, and her weight is around 110 pounds. She has blonde hair and blue eyes. Both of her ears are pierced. Jodi was born and raised in Long Prairie, Minnesota. She was the youngest daughter of her parents Maurice Nicholas Huisentruit and Imogen Huisentruit. After finishing high school, Jodi went on to the St. Cloud State University, where she studied mass communications and speech communication, graduating with a bachelor's degree in 1990. At the time of her disappearance, Jodi was working as an anchor at a CBS affiliate KIMT news station in Mason City, Iowa. On June 27, 1995, the day when Jodi disappeared, her producer, Amy Coons, noticed that Jodi had failed to report to work as scheduled at 4 a.m. in the morning and decided to call Jodi and see if everything was okay. The reason why Jodi had to report for work so early in the morning was because she was supposed to be live on air at 6 a.m. in the morning as an anchor of the morning show called Daybreak. When Jodi Huisentruit answered the telephone, she explained to her producer Amy that she had overslept and that she was preparing to leave for the station. Some sources state that oversleeping was a regular occurrence for Jodi and that she would be late for work at least once per week. However, by 6 a.m., Jodi had still not arrived, so Amy Coons filled in for her, and around an hour later at 7 a.m., the KIMT staff called the Mason City Police. Now, when police arrived at Jodi's apartment, they found her red Mazda Miata in the parking lot, as well as other evidence that suggested a struggle had taken place near her car. Some of Jodi's personal items, including high heels, blow dryer, hairspray, earrings, and a bent car key, were found scattered around the parking lot next to her Mazda Miata. A search around the apartment complex turned up no trace of Jodi. police noticed that her personal items appeared to trail off away from her vehicle. This indicated to law enforcement that Jodi had forcibly been taken away as she was trying to unlock her car. Inside of Jodi's apartment, investigators noticed that the toilet seat in Jodi's bathroom has been left up. Because Jodi was living alone, to some this detail suggested that a potential male perpetrator could have left the toilet seat up. By that afternoon, the Mason City Police launched a massive search aided by the FBI and the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation. Rescue teams scoured the countryside while divers and police dogs covered the Winnebago River and its banks. No trace of Jodi was found. 2 days into Jodi's disappearance, on June 29th, law enforcement stated they had already interviewed around 100 people, but at that time they still hadn't considered anyone as a suspect. Soon after, multiple witnesses came forward and told law enforcement they saw a white van in the parking lot of Jodi's apartment complex, and also they heard a scream about the same time that Jodi vanished. Another witness said that she was jogging at 4:30 a.m. and was almost hit by a car exiting the parking lot at a high rate of speed. She said that the car did not have its lights on and saw her at the last second, and then stopped in the middle of the road as if the driver was looking back at her and then took off again. These new details strengthened the belief that Jodi has been abducted. Jodi also kept a personal journal. The last entries in that journal before she disappeared suggested that she wanted to move away from Mason City. She wrote in her journal that she wanted something bigger and was tired of Mason City from a career perspective. According to her mother and sister, Jodi had a lot of friends in the Mason City area, but was not seriously involved with or was dating anyone. Jodi also reportedly told friends and family in the month prior to her disappearance that she felt that she was being stalked or watched. She told her family and friends about a black pickup truck that was apparently following her on 2 different occasions. Once when she was taking a bike ride, and another time when she was jogging. Jodi had reported these incidents to the local law enforcement, and she was given an escort to work on some mornings. This also prompted Jodi to start taking a self-defense class. Jodi Huisentruit liked socializing and was a very outgoing person. She had a lot of friends in the area, and she hung out with a few of them, including John Vancise, a 48-year-old divorcee who at one point lived in the same apartment building as her. John was more than 20 years older than Jodi, therefore to some their relationship seemed strange. Jodi told people that she was only friends with John. On the other hand, some believed that John Vancise was romantically attracted to Jodi. Among other friends, she also knew a man named Billy Pruin, a 42-year-old farmer who was found dead in his home 3 months prior to her disappearance. There have been a long-rumored possible connection between Billy's death and Jodi's disappearance. However, a private investigator hired by the Pruin family uncovered that Billy Pruin was the victim of an accidental firearm discharge, and his death has no connection to Jodi Huisentruit's disappearance. The weekend before she vanished, Jodi went to Iowa City on a water ski trip with John Vancise and a few other friends. Now, to my understanding, during this trip, the group of people spent a lot of time on John's boat that John called Jodi. The fact that John named his boat after Jodi Huisentruit to some suggested a potential obsession with her. At some point during the trip, Jodi and another female friend named Tammy left John's boat and went on to another boat with 2 local men who were known to pick up young women and videotape them dancing while on their boat. Police have the video of Jodi and her friend Tammy dancing on this other boat, and they have cleared the men who owned that boat and made that videotape. Now, when Jodi and Tammy returned back to John Vancise's boat, John was reportedly very upset that he had left his boat and went to hang out with some other men. The group returned back to Mason City on Sunday, June 25th, which was 2 days before Jodi had disappeared. The following day, on Monday, June 26th, one day prior to her disappearance, Jodi did her normal morning show, then left the station at 9 a.m. in the morning to attend a charity golf tournament. She was golfing with two clients from KIMT and also the station manager. At one point, it started raining and the golf game had to be cut short. On the same day, Jodi and the same group of people from the golf tournament had a dinner around 6 p.m. in the evening at the clubhouse of the golf course. Jodi reportedly left around 8 p.m. that night. At 8:24 p.m., Jodi called a friend in Mississippi. However, the friend's husband picked up the phone. Jodi told the friend's husband that she just wanted to talk and that it was nothing urgent, and if the friend got back home before 10 p.m. in the evening, that friend should give her a call. Now, the following morning on June 27th, Jodi was apparently abducted as she was making her way to her red Mazda Miata. Jodi has not been seen since and was officially pronounced dead in 2001. And there are a lot of persons of interest in this case. We're going to be jumping to all of them very soon. Let me just sip some water, dude, and your initial thoughts on the case.
You know, it's interesting because when we're doing the research, and I was like, where was this case when I was, around back then? And it's interesting too that she's not even that much older than I am. Now, that being said, I do wonder when she got into this career, as many people do. I wonder if she realized the kind of hours she was working. Were you a little bit surprised at all when you saw what kind of hours? I mean, just look as we break down the case and see, when she has to be accountable and when she was expected. Is it sort of like almost staggering to realize that these people that have this kind of interesting and exciting job have to get to work for like 3 in the morning?
Yeah, that was definitely interesting to me, but I mean, I guess it makes sense. If the show is live on air at 6 a.m. in the morning, you would probably need to get in a few hours beforehand, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. So once again, I think there's a gazillion persons of interest in this case. So let's just jump through some of them, and then let's really flesh everything out. So once again, before we jump to the persons of interest, I want to quickly jump to a few visual assets that I have here on our screen here for the people who are watching this on the YouTube channel. So first of all, I would like to present the map of this case. We can see that the case happened in northern Iowa. Everything is happening in 1995. This is Long Prairie, Minnesota. This is where Jodi grew up and was raised at. This is this point in the map is for Mason City, the place where Jodi was living at during her disappearance. And these are a few other locations that will come up shortly as we talk about some potential theories and potential persons of interest in this case. Now, firstly, I want to jump to the Mason City area. Once again, this is that Mason City Country Club. This is where Jodi had dinner one day before she disappeared, and she played golf here. Jodi was apparently a pretty good golfer because she was really good at golf when she was a kid. This is the KIMT TV station. This is where she worked, and this is Jodi's apartment complex where she was seemingly abducted from. Now, I want to quickly zoom in on the apartment complex. Now, from the apartment complex, we can see that I have a detailed map here. We can see that these are the key apartments in Mason City, and Jody was actually living in Complex C, Building C, and I want to quickly jump on the street view to give us a better look at the scene before we jump into the case details. This is the parking lot where Jody vanished from, seemingly was abducted from. There are a few interesting other things that are surrounding this parking lot. I think one of the more interesting things is that it's right next to the Winnebago River. So there was speculation that she may have drowned potentially, but once again, it seemed like a clear-cut abduction, and we'll jump into why. So it seems like she wasn't in the Winnebago River. Now, Jody was living in the second floor, according to my other research analysts that have done some work for me this week. And I believe this was the entrance to that apartment complex. Now, somewhere in this parking lot, Jody had parked her red Mazda Miata, and apparently in the morning she was making her way out of this apartment complex to her red Mazda Miata when she got snatched up. And we know that she probably tried unlocking her red Mazda Miata because close to that vehicle a bent car key was found, indicating that someone snatched her up as she had already put the car key inside of the car's door, and she got snatched up, and subsequently the car key was bent. I want to quickly jump through some crime scene photographs, dude, and anything that jumps out to you from the crime scene initially? Like, this is the actual crime scene pictures, man.
Is that wait? So was the Mazda Miata? That's not it right there, though, right? Is it the black car?
I believe this is the Mazda Miata. It
Okay,
was,
so that's actual. I don't know
yes.
why I thought it was red. I thought Mazda may.
It is red. It is red. This is a black and white picture, dude. So I think this is why
Oh,
it's
okay.
black.
Yeah, that's what it is. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, the only thing I thought of initially, other than like Mazda Miatas have this weird reputation in the States for like being kind of like a girl's car, but I always thought they look pretty cool. I always wish I would have been old enough to drive them when they first came out. You know, the other thing, so one of the pictures you just flashed
Which one?
was the drag marks one was interesting, and I'm just gonna kind of leave this thought out there, but I just couldn't help but notice like, wow, they really honed in on that. I wonder if that's a really common kind of thing to look for. That I mean, they must teach that a lot in you know, like obviously the training for detectives, but it's interesting. Does that look like a drag mark to you if you were to see that somewhere?
Not necessarily. I would think a drag mark would be more explicit. You know what I mean?
Like uniform, right? I mean, I guess it makes sense if you're trying to lift somebody, but I get we'll get into it. But yeah, it was interesting. There was like such an interesting constellation of clues and pictures here initially, but I mean, just from the very description, you know, this like trail of keys and belongings and things from somebody, and then you know the scream and the report of the car and the shoe and all this stuff. I mean, this is a lot more than we usually get, right? I mean, the last week, case in point, we
Yeah.
don't we have kind of we have kind of the opposite of this last week,
Hmm.
which almost made it more mysterious. But like when you see this, I mean, this is just bone chilling.
Totally. Also, a quick note: why items like the blow dryer that we can see right here were scattered also next to her car. Let's remember that Jodi Huisentruit was an anchor on a live morning TV show, and so I think she would need like hair dryers, like different shoes, etc. You know what I mean?
You know, it's interesting. I wonder. So this is where I don't know how it is for smaller market TV stations because she's not presumably pretty small market. Um, I mean, a lot of these most entertainment places have their own hair and makeup people. I don't know how it is for these little kind of field station TV stations out there. Maybe they do make you do your own stuff, or maybe you help out, right? Maybe she's specifically particular. That's a little weird to me, though. I don't know. maybe the dragging around her own hair dryer, but maybe if she ever do you know if she was always an in studio person, or was she ever like a on location person? Because maybe that would make sense then.
I think she was definitely an on location person as well as a studio person, because I've seen
Okay,
clips of
yeah.
her interviewing people actually on location as well.
Okay, that makes sense. So I think that kind of confirms, and I'll just pass it on to the next point. It does kind of confirm that it's like, you know, what I mean, if she was a plumber, that would be like her wrenches and stuff all over the floor, right? Like kind of tools of the trade, so she can
Yes.
get her job done right.
Yes, and dude, what do you make of this picture right here that we're looking at? This is the last crime scene picture, and it's well, it's not obviously it's not the picture of that exact white van, but apparently one witness, or I believe actually multiple witnesses, have seen a similar white van to the one that we're looking right now in the picture in the vicinity, and that white van was never there before. So there was a white van in that parking lot at the time when Jodie disappeared, and no one can identify the owner of that white van. So, did this detail jump to you, and do you think there's a potential connection between this mysterious white van and Jodi Huisentruit?
Always the panel fans, right? Seems like this comes up a little bit frequently as a suspect, but yeah, once again, this is like a little bit different for this case, and then it's so much more explicit. You know, it's not just one of several vehicles that were kind of sighted in the area. I think what they say, it was parked right in front of the apartment with the like the engine running, I think, but the like, with the running lights were on, but the headlights were off, something like
Yeah,
that, right?
something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah, what does that mean?
like it was waiting.
Oh. Okay, yeah, that's very bad, man. That's terrible. Okay, so this is the parking lot. So once again, the she's abducted. She can either go there, the abductor can take her there, or there are two directions, right? So I guess let's really jump into the multiple persons of interest that jumped out in this case over the years, and there have been quite a few. I would like to start off with a man named Tony Jackson. So Tony Jackson is a man that we can see right now on the screen. I have a little bit of information about him, and then let's really analyze. Do we think that he had some sort of a connection to this case? Now, Tony Jackson was a college student who lived and worked in Mason City at the time of Jodie's disappearance. He was later kicked out of that university and ended up living in St. Paul, Minnesota, working at a bar. So, a different state, a different city. Tony Jackson was convicted of multiple rapes and torture, kidnapping in the early 2000s in that St. Paul area, as well as a nearby suburb, and is now serving a life sentence in Stillwater Prison in Minnesota. So he lived in the same city that Jodie lived in, then he got kicked out of the university, went to live in St. Paul, and committed atrocious, violent sexual assaults, and is now serving a life sentence. Now, how he connects to Jodie is pretty interesting. Let me continue on with what I have on this guy. Tony Jackson claimed he did not know who Jodi Huisentruit was. However, one of his friends said he talked to Jodie at a bar for several minutes a few months before Jodie disappeared. Also, the week before Jodie disappeared, Tony Jackson had reportedly broken up with his girlfriend and was said to have a temper. Tony's alibi for the morning of Jodie's disappearance is also not solid. Tony said he was injured at work that night before, and then he went to the ER and went home. There is a record of him going to the ER, but he was discharged and walked out on his own hours before Jodie vanished. Allegedly, while in prison, Tony Jackson made a rap song with the lyrics, quote, "I offed a TV anchor and she's stiffin' in tiffin." Tiffin is a town in Iowa not that far from Mason City. After this information was revealed, police searched a silo near Tiffin and had two cadaver dogs hit on a location. However, subsequent digs did not reveal a body or any evidence. So this is pretty much what I have on Tony Jackson. If we could quickly jump to the map. If we could quickly jump to the map, and seems like, ooh, wow, it seems like the map is a little bit broken. So, dude, before I fix,
Yeah, while you're doing that, I'll jump in with something. I heard a little bit longer version of one of the rhymes that Tony made. That was supposed to be connected. I mean, and it seemed like it was pretty clearly connected. Now, whether he really did anything or whether he's just, you know, bored and looking to make trouble, we'll talk about later. But one of the rhymes, by the way, I was kind of impressed with the rhyming scheme. It was a little bit clever. He said something. One of the rhymes in the lyric was had the word silage in it, and I wonder it's kind of. I was just thinking, on one hand, maybe that's why they looked at silos, but like silage actually means something else. I think I'm not a farmer, but I believe silage is there's kind of like a place where you would it's like compost. So it's like compost made like industrial scale for farming. I think there's a part of your farm where you take all your stuff you want to compost and you dump it over there, and then compost turns into fertilizer and stuff. But I think to me that means what he means by that is like she's buried somewhere. You know what I mean? So to me it's a little weird. I would be a little annoyed if that was the extent of their investigation. Is well, he's talking about silos because he said silage and like God, weren't any of you guys farmers? I mean, for God's sake, you're in the Midwest. Just my little thought about that just now. Um, okay, that's
yeah,
that's all I got for that.
no,
Yeah,
that's interesting, dude. That's interesting. Once again, I think I don't have the correct rap lyrics of this man, but I do have a. Let me find this. I think I have. Yeah, this is the article that I've looked at before doing the show. It's from ABC's News, and um, now interviewed many years after the fact. Tony Jackson says that all that I can tell you about Jodi Huisentruit is that she has become a central part of my life since I've been incarcerated. And he also stated that it's unfortunate that people try to take rape and murder and put it all together as one big heinous act and say that if you had did this, you would have done this as well, Jackson said. And he also says, I'm telling you right now, I'd never been to Tiffin, Iowa, never traveled to Tiffin, Iowa. I would imagine that Tiffin, Iowa is pretty much kind of like all of the other small towns in Iowa. That if a black male introduced himself in Tiffin, Iowa, somebody would remember that. So, once again, he says he's never been to Tiffin. He, I think, also denies ever making that rap song. So I'm not really sure about that credibility. Once again, one of the reasons why I don't really think that Tony, well, he could have obviously committed a murder, of course, but it's interesting that he moves to a whole different city, and years later he commits rapes and apparently torture, but he doesn't kill the victim. So one of the podcasts that I listened on Jodie's case, they said that people with violent intentions, deranged people like Tony Jackson, they don't really get any better. They only get worse over time. So it would be kind of interesting that he would potentially abduct and murder Jodi Huisentruit, but then later on would only rape and torture his victims and let them go. Wouldn't you agree that that's kind of not the path of a psychopath?
yeah, that's a good analysis of that. I also wonder. So like when you're in jail, well, when someone's in prison and they've been convicted I mean, unless they like pled guilty, they're almost always trying to like get out, right? So they almost never will admit their guilt if they didn't admit their guilt going into jail, and if they have a chance to get out. But it's interesting you said that because it's almost like he's kind of trying to admit that he did one level of crimes without really saying it. He's saying like, look, people that do this one set of heinous crimes, that doesn't mean we always not we, I mean they, I mean people, you know what I mean? He's sort of like jumping around it maybe in this version of it, where he's like, hey, maybe like he's trying to say that like he wouldn't be capable of killing somebody. And I don't mean to laugh at that. I mean, it could be true, right? I mean, there could be definitely people who would still make that distinction, you know, even though they just ruined someone's life and their mind and their body, um, would still think that somehow if they took the life, they might be, you know, answerable to a higher power or something like that. You know, whatever the reason, right? It's for someone not to do that. So that's kind of what I thought of when you said that. I thought, gosh, maybe that was his way of really trying to clear himself without also automatically signing up for the stuff he's in jail for that I'm sure he's trying to appeal, you know, every moment of his, you know, a week, you know, in terms of his defense
Yeah.
ongoing. Yeah.
No, yeah, I agree, man. I would like to jump to another person of interest. This time we have two people, and I just put them on the screen. They are Dustin Honken and Angela Johnson. So Dustin Honken and his girlfriend Angela Johnson were at the center of the meth distribution network in the Upper Iowa area in the 90s. Dustin Honken allegedly killed multiple people who were going to testify against him in federal court. He, alongside Angela Johnson, were convicted of killing a government informant, his girlfriend, and her two children in 2005. Dustin Honken was sentenced to death, while Angela Johnson is serving a life in prison sentence. How they connect to Jodie's disappearance is that while it's not believed that either of them were directly involved, Angela reportedly told an investigator to talk to Dustin because he knew what happened and why. Yeah, so once again, these are the victims that Dustin Honken and Angela Johnson murdered. So, long story short, they were involved in meth distribution in the Upper Iowa area, and they killed a bunch of people that were going to testify against them in court. Later on, they got caught, and Angela told, I think, the investigators or the media, I'm not quite sure, that they should talk to Dustin Honken, her previous boyfriend, that is now sentenced to death, as he knows more information that relates to Jodie's disappearance. I didn't really manage to uncover anything else. So once again, don't have that much to say about these people. Your thoughts? Did you find anything, or just in general, anything you want to add?
No, nothing extra. I mean, it just seemed like a tenuous connection. So wait, why would they want to kill Jodie? What was she gonna?
Zero clue, zero connection.
Yeah, that was when it was mentioned. It was like, so it just seems like these people just, well, this lady at least attached herself to the Jodie thing, like almost like she wants attention or
I do
some
have
extra
another.
chance.
I do have another detail that I recall hearing. One interesting and peculiar fact is that Angela Johnson, the woman on the right, she was actually working at the Mason City Country Club at the same time when Jodie disappeared. And let's remember that Jodie actually went to the Mason City Country Club to have dinner on the evening prior to her disappearance. So I guess the connection is a little bit bigger when you think about that, right?
I think so. It's interesting to think what she's implying there, but okay, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah,
All right,
well, yeah, but that's all we have. So once again,
yeah.
the next theory, the well we have here is that, or people that could connect to Jodie are the people or the two guys on the boat that took Jodi and her friend Tammy off of John Vancise's boat and then videotaped them dancing just a few days before Jodi disappeared. So on the map, really quickly, I want to paint a better picture. It was, I think, 3 days before Jodi disappeared when Jodi and a group of her friends went on a water ski trip on John Vancise's boat that John even named after Jodi. And they, I think, went to Iowa City area for that ski trip. And somewhere in the Iowa City area, they got off of John Vancise's boat and got on the boat of the two other individuals that videotaped them dancing on their boat. Now, apparently they were creepy guys. Apparently for years, no one even knew that Jodi and her friend Tammy had left John Vancise's boat and went off with some other guys on their boat a few days before she disappeared. Now, this information only came out in 2019 when an investigator named Steve Ridge found this out. Steve also found out that there was video evidence of Jodi on another boat. Well, probably the boat of these two individuals. He was able to track the boat owners down and obtain a copy of the videotape from that day, which showed Jodi and Tammy dancing on the deck of that boat. The tape has been turned over to Mason City Police Department, and they say they have interviewed the two men from the boat and cleared them. It is not known if they knew who Jodi was, nor or not at that time. They got what am I saying? What I'm trying to say here is that it's not known if the two men knew that Jodi was a somewhat famous local TV anchor, although it's claimed by some that they were bragging about getting a TV person on their boat. But once again, just the fact that police cleared them and they willingly gave the videotape to some private investigator, I don't think they were connected, because I feel like if you were connected, you would be probably more hesitant to hand over potential evidence to like some private investigator that you probably don't even need to legally provide anything to that person, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's good legal advice right there. I would say even if you weren't guilty, you just probably talk to an attorney before you turn over any kind of evidence to anybody claiming to represent a client who isn't law enforcement.
Yeah, totally, man. All right, so at this point, we could jump to another person of interest. This is the person of interest that I think I found the least amount of information, but I definitely wanted to mention it. And from the description, this dude sounds like he could surely be connected. But once again, there's so little information, at least that I've managed to find, that I just don't know. So basically, his name is Dirk Jablonski, and Dirk Jablonski was the public works director in Mason City at the time of Jodi's disappearance. He was later reported to act very strange when someone brought up her name, although he remained in Mason City for another 10 years after Jodi disappeared. In 2004, he left Mason City for the same job in Rapid City, South Dakota. In 2008, Dirk resigned from his job in South Dakota when allegations of stalking and harassment were filed against him by one of his employees. Other than the one person saying that he acted strange when Jodi's name was mentioned, there is no evidence that he harassed or stalked her. So once again, a creepy public works director in Mason City who likes stalking people and harassing people was acting weird when someone in his environment mentioned Jodi's disappearance. So yeah, like seems like he could be connected, but once again, this is such a vague detail that I'm not really sure. I feel like if Dirk Jablonski was really somehow connected to Jodi's disappearance, there would be more information on him. You know what I mean? I think like there would be something more. That's how I'm thinking.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I do wonder whenever something like this happens. I mean, at some point, someone who's a creepo, they probably know they're a creepo, right? Or, I mean, I'm not saying this guy's a creepo, but I'm just saying if somebody was a creepo, maybe if something bad happened, do you think like all the creepos that like they're not quite bad enough to do something like this, but like they're kind of self conscious that people might have that perception of them, and then something really bad happens, they're like, "It wasn't me," it wasn't it. I, I, I would never do anything like that, and it's like, I guess in this case, we have so far we've got we're on number four of kind of creepy people, and we haven't even gotten to the last two there. The list is pretty big. At some point, at least some of these people didn't do it, but they may still feel, I don't know, self conscious or feel like people are looking at them anyway. Food for
Yeah.
thought.
Good, good. We have another man, once again, another very vague person of interest here. I think I have his image right here. This guy right here. His name is Thomas Corscadden. Thomas Corscadden was a convicted rapist of women and children and had a sadistic personality. In the past, he made statements allegedly knowing that Jodie is dead, and I tried to look into this as much as I could. Apparently, in one of the court hearings, a court employee briefly mentioned Jodi Huisentruit's disappearance, and I think the mention wasn't even connected to what the court proceeding was all about. It was just a random mention of Jodi Huisentruit, and then this guy Thomas Corscadden proceeded to say, "Oh, she's dead," or something like that. "I know she's dead." He claimed in the court proceedings that he knew that she was dead. So this is how he's implicated in this case. Thomas Corscadden also spent some time in Mason City in the 90s, and according to his wife at that time, he was angered when he was unable to get tickets to a show recorded at KIMT TV station where Jodie was working at. Thomas Corscadden is also alleged to have driven a similar style van to the one seen in the parking lot on the morning of Jodie's disappearance. I think the fact that he had a similar white van is because he was a rapist, so he had to have a white van to do the rapings anyways. So I think that's kind of explainable right there. It could have been a completely different white van in the parking lot where Jodie disappeared. It could have been someone else's parking lot. And I think, I don't know, he didn't get tickets for a live TV show at the KIMT studios. And would he then subsequently track down Jodie and murder her for that? I mean, it's possible, but once again, other than these very, in my opinion, weak circumstantial evidences, I can't really connect this.
Yeah, I agree. It still seems tenuous.
Yeah, and once again, all of these people seem like they could have done it, but we have just so many of them. But I think we now literally got out of the, let's say, all of these tenuous connections to like something a little bit more strong now. And I want to start off with the police connection. The Mason City Police is also suspected by some to have something to do with Jodie's disappearance, and the police connection is definitely, well, it would be a cover-up that the Mason City Police Department is covering up Jodie's disappearance. I have a few points here. I want to read them out. Rumors have gone around almost since day one of Jodie's disappearance that someone either in or close to Mason City PD had something to do with Jodie's disappearance. At various times, officers' names have surfaced, first from a local minister or a priest, that then an ex-Mason City police officer who was discharged for not properly handling tips in the Jodi Huisentruit's case, both the priest, the local priest, and this ex-police officer thrown shade on the police department in Mason City. And most recently, in January of 2020, so very recently, someone spray painted one of the suspected officers' name on a Mason City billboard asking for tips related to Jodie's disappearance. Now, the name that was spray painted on that billboard, we can see it right now on our YouTube channel for everyone who's looking at it. It says Frank Stearns, and it also says Machine Shed. So we can see Frank Stearns right here. This is the police officer implicated in Jodie's disappearance. And also we can see Machine Shed. Machine Shed, as if this was the location where, I don't know, Jodie was potentially buried or something like that. So this is Frank Stearns, by the way. Frank Stearns was a police officer who was connected in investigating Jodie's disappearance. I want to continue on with my notes, and then we can dissect this cover-up theory even more. There have also been some odd things that were happening between Jodi Huisentruit and the Mason City Police Department. On one occasion in October of 1994, so like a little bit less than a year before Jodie disappeared, Jodie reportedly filed a report with the Mason City Police Department regarding stalking and harassing phone calls, because she was getting phone calls from someone who was stalking and harassing her. But when asked about the report later, Mason City Police Department denied having ever received it. So once again, it's like she reported a crime to the Mason Police Department, but the Mason City Police Department, they didn't even took notes of that. Also, it was reported that the Mason City Police Department had escorted Jodie to her work on a few occasions after Jodie reported a black pickup truck following her, but Mason City Police Department denied ever providing this. So once again, either this is shady or Mason Police Department is not that great at keeping notes of what they actually do. And then finally, in the early 2010s, the Mason City Globe Gazette, which is a local newspaper, received a mysterious brown envelope in the mail. Inside that envelope, there were photocopies of Jodie's private journal, which was supposedly in police custody, and it was not public information. After months of speculation, the wife of an ex-police chief admitted that she had made a copy of the journal and she was the one who sent it to the local newspaper. So, there has never been an official explanation on why she selected the journal pages that she did to take copies of. Also, it's unknown why she would send potential evidence in a capital case to a local newspaper. It's never been explained. She just took the photocopies of the journal and sent it to the newspaper. And then as of now, there is no physical evidence that Mason City Police Department are involved. So, dude, I just want to take a quick sip of water, and I wanna ask a question, dude. I'm pretty sure you ran into like the police cover-up angle in this case, right?
Yeah, it's. I think the part that blows me away the most is, I mean, up to a certain point, I mean, we've run into this so many times, where that's always going to be one of the theories, right? Is that the police are in on it. I mean, I've even used that theory when I've been mad about things not going my way, because I kind of wondered, at some point you got to wonder when things don't get fixed, and it seems like there's evidence and it's not, like, where's the paper trail? Where's the complaint I made? Even, that even sounds familiar, by the way, saying, oh, they'd escorted her several times and now there's no record of it, and et cetera. And I've even run into that with like 911 calls I've made that I've asked to have looked at by my local police department. Yeah, regardless, whatever the back and forth is, all of a sudden you've got these photocopied pages from the diary that are, like I said, are evidence and active investigation, and then like of all people, the wife of a former police chief. What's going on there? What were your thoughts when you first heard that part?
It's almost as if the wife knew something and she was kind of throwing like subliminal messages like, yo, the PD had something to do with Jodie's disappearance.
And it's weird too because it would. I mean, maybe I should save this for later because you might have some extra details to go on. But yeah, no, it's fascinating.
Yeah, and really quickly, I want to go through a Reddit post. I'm not sure if I'm going to read all of it, but I definitely want to read a little bit of it. And this shines a little bit more light to the cover up theory. I wouldn't do this on a regular occasion, but since I want to cover this case thoroughly, I really want to read a little bit about it. So there was, remember when I said that there was a pastor or whatever his position was called? Yeah, it says here the pastor. So that pastor that implicated the police in this disappearance case, well, he made a following statement, and I want to quickly read what I see here on the Reddit. So yeah, I just want to quickly do this. My name is Shane Flippot, and I'm the pastor of Christian Fellowship Church in Mason City. On June 28, 2007, I received a phone call from an individual in Minnesota named Donald Milks, who claimed to have information on the death and disappearance of Jodi Huisentruit. As I was out of the office at that time, I returned his phone call that afternoon. I spoke in depth with him and his pastor for 9 minutes. I typed detailed notes of our conversation. He had to leave for work, and therefore he called me back on his cell phone to complete our conversation. Following the call, I immediately informed the members of my staff for the sake of integrity, because some of the information incriminated current MCPD officers. The information was unwilling to meet and the informant was unwilling to meet and or speak with local authorities. He came to me as a result of viewing our television program called Faith in Action. Being aware of the fact that information such as this must go through the proper channels, I called Officer Maria Owl. Maria Owl is once again that other discharged officer that I briefly mentioned previously, who is and now I'm reading the statement again. I called Officer Maria Owl, who is also my sister-in-law, that evening or the next day to ask for her assistance and advice. When I spoke with Officer Owl, she was on her off-duty days. However, she notified me that I must take the information to the MCPD first in order to comply with proper procedures and to preserve the integrity of the contact. The reason for my concern about the details of the information was that it was vaguely reminiscent of information told to me in the summer of 1999 by Mason City resident Gerald Best at the completion of a church service at her prior address. And he states the prior address. Now, Mr. Gerald Best was found murdered later that year, and his homicide is yet unsolved to this day. I passed that information onto the MCPD in early 2000, and as a result of his murder. Okay, the department, however, has no record of my contact with them. So once again, more people contacting MCPD and they just don't note it down. Like, you call MCPD, like there's no records being made that you ever called them, it seems like. In early July 2007, after the phone call from Donald Milks, I placed another call to MCPD. I asked dispatch who I would speak with about the Jodi Huisentruit case, because let's remember, Donald Milks called the pastor and told him information about Jodi Huisentruit's disappearance. Now, I don't think from this post we know what exactly Donald Milks told the pastor about Jodi's case. Apparently that it was somehow connected potentially to the MCPD, and now he's calling MCPD himself. So he calls them and he is transferred to Officer Frank Stearns, the same dude whose name was spray painted on the billboard in Mason City. After speaking at length with Officer Frank Stearns, he transferred me to Officer Ron Wandy Word. I relayed to the both of them the account of my conversation with the informant. Both officers introduced me not instructed me not to make contact with the informant at this time. But this is the crazy point. But to wait until I hear back from them. So the MCPD said, "Don't talk again to this dude named Donald Milks. We will talk to him." And then we'll call you back. So that's what's happening here. But, uh, actually, let me see where I left it off. At no time was an officer dispatched to speak with me. My information was not collected officially, nor was I issued an evidence receipt. A month passed with no contact from the MCPD, so I again initiated contact with them in August of 2007. I spoke with Officer Frank Stearns, who transferred me to Officer Dennis Bankston, who told me the information wasn't credible. Okay, and then I'm not gonna get into all of this. You guys can definitely find this post on Reddit and dig more into it. The other connection with MCPD is that Maria Owl, the officer that was discharged, she apparently had a lawsuit that she won against this police department, and also she was discharged because she was mishandling the the evidence in Jodie's case. But she claims that she didn't do that, and also Maria All claims that she arrived at a scene once. I think it was a crime scene unrelated to Jodie's disappearance, and she overheard a few police officers describing that someone in the police department had connection to the disappearance of Jodi Huisentruit. So I'm very sorry, like the police cover-up angle is very messy. I suggest everyone who has any doubts about it, like find that Reddit post and like read it truly. I don't want to belabor it because I think we have one really big theory still coming up, but I definitely want to hear your thoughts about this now that I read. And was this understandable? And do you have any takeaways?
I think so. I'll summarize my takeaway by saying, wouldn't it be interesting if a lot of this stuff about the police department is just them not being that competent, or and maybe not having a budget? I mean, I'll point out, the years involved from we're spanning from like what mid '90s to like now, um, and CRM software like customer relationship management software, things to like log contacts and things like that. It takes a lot of work to put notes and stuff like that in there, and I know that's part of the job for jobs like police, but it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to be answering 10 phone calls and then try to catch up on your notes. um, and I'll also say that software is expensive, to the point where I've been at major companies, I won't say which ones, I've been at major companies that tried to build their own CRM and didn't make it work. Um, and there's a company right now, I won't say what company, that makes its entire living, and they're massive, doing just CRM software. That's a long spiel from me about CRM, but my point is that just a lot of these like lost contacts and stuff, that like my sort of razor, Occam's razor thought was like, maybe they're just not very good at stuff, and they're just not, you know, not doing some aspects of their job well, or they're overwhelmed.
Yeah. Also, I'm then thinking to myself, then who left the spray painting on the billboard? Because obviously someone spray painted Frank's name. Frank's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I, I chuckled. Even the first time I saw it, I had to laugh because, I mean, a couple of things. First of all, poor Frank Stearns, if you're Frank Stearns, because if you didn't do anything, and then here's this billboard, and then someone goes, I mean, that's just like the ultimate prank. that's part of what I think of as just someone pulling a prank on him. Let's take it charitably. What if it was? What if instead of accusing Frank Stearns, what if it was like a message? What if it was like, Frank Stearns, remember the machine shed? I told you. Remember you? I mean, we talked about this, so that was one thought. But the other thing I mean, just the other funny thing was, we already mentioned the wife of the police chief who did what we think like an adult. Suppose you were an adult and you had this burning secret, this you want to unburden your conscience of. Well, like, I mean, is 40, 45, 46 year old me going to go climb up on that billboard and like scrawl out some kind of like slanderous graffiti? Or am I going to do the normal sane adult thing and like send evidence and something that is credible? So to me, it's more funny than it is, necessarily a credible piece of evidence.
Yeah, I agree. It kind of seems like a potential prank for sure. And, someone left this, let's remember, 25 years after the fact. So if someone really knew about Jodie's case, like this was 25 years later. So, that person who knew about that sensitive information would be 25 years older. So it wouldn't like this is someone who's like in their 30s, maybe in their 40s with you, but there's a high chance that the person with the sensitive information would have been like 60 or even maybe 70 at that point. And I don't really see them really climbing on billboards and like typing Frank Stearns machine shed, you know what I mean? So that's a good point with the age thing. But now let's jump. Oh yeah, of course.
One other thing I was going to add in is I always think of this whenever I see this specific kind of trick. It's just a dirty trick too, right? Because it just got us to put it out there, but it's like it's a dirty trick. Like if someone were to say to you, "Oh, how long has it been since you stopped beating your wife?" Right? And it's
Oh
like, well,
yeah.
wait a minute, I don't beat my wife. I don't, you know what I mean? I mean, you don't have a wife, but you know what I mean? It's like that thing where it's like you're already on the defensive and then you're already smeared. So, yeah, I mean, it kind of almost makes you wonder, like, was that just something random or did somebody have a bone to pick? And then I guess as I'm still following the string for some reason, I'm like, let's suppose it was like some 13 or 14-year-old. Where did they get that from? Like, did their dad or their uncle or somebody say something? Like, where did that? What a random thing to put up there, unless you had like, I don't know, some kind of beef with. I mean, that does make sense if you were like an angry teen, who like when you were younger he caught you and now that he's retired you're still mad about it. I don't know, just such a weird random thing to pop up there on that billboard of all things.
Yeah, also, I think since this case was quite public and it says right there on the billboard, findjodi.com, and I feel like people that would go to findjodi.com, they would probably run into the theories, and one of the theories is the police cover up theory. So I think it would be pretty simple to, like, that you don't have to dig that deep to uncover a name of Frank Stearns, right? But I think this is a good time to jump to to my understanding, the only person that police officially, well, the same police that is kind of suspected to be involved in her disappearance, to have named as a suspect. All these other people, I think, were only persons of interest. John Vancise, right? John Vancise, the creepy old dude, was apparently the only person who was actually named as a suspect. Now, I want to quickly jump to what I have on this guy, and actually, we will add a few more timeline details that won't really add up in the grand scheme of things. So, John was 20 years older than Jodie. They have met sometime before Jodie vanished and spent a lot of time together. They would water ski off of John's boat, drink, and party together. John reportedly was very possessive of Jodie. He would tell other people that Jodie was, quote, his girl, end quote. In fact, at one point, Billy Bruin, the same 42-year-old farmer who was a friend of Jodie's, had asked her to dance at a bar, and the next day John came to the same bar, found Billy, and told him to, quote, stay away from her, she's mine, end quote. After Jodie's disappearance, John claimed that he was like a father to Jodie, and that he had a girlfriend the entire time that he knew Jodie. However, it's unclear if John actually had a girlfriend, because most girlfriends would not be okay with John spending time with Jodie and her other young female friends water skiing, as well as naming his boat after Jodie and going to parties and like drinking with Jodie all the time and throwing her surprise birthday parties, all that stuff, right? Now, also, John, and this is a timeline detail that we haven't yet covered, and this is a very crucial timeline detail. John had thrown a surprise birthday party for Jodie a few weeks before she disappeared, and the whole party was videotaped. John claims that on Monday, June 26th, the day before Jodie disappeared, she came over to his house at some point in the evening and watched the video of her surprise birthday party at John's house. If this is correct, that would mean that John was the last person to ever see Jodie. This story doesn't add up when you think about it. On the same day Jodie had spent the day at the golf course, went home, went for dinner again with her colleagues, got back home again, called her friend in Mississippi, and then she would have to decide to go to John's place to drink and watch the birthday party video. And she would do this all on a night, on a Monday night, when she knows she had to be at work at 3:30 a.m. the next morning. Hello guys, just wanted to make a quick clarification. I did look into more in depth into this timeline, and according to the Huisentruit file produced by Gary and Josh, the two, I guess, investigators that were looking into this case a few years after Jodie disappeared, they stated on their show that Jodie actually went to John's Vancise's home first and only then went back home and made that phone call to that friend in Mississippi.
On Monday, she attended a golf tournament at the Mason City Country Club with then news director Doug Murbach.
I saw Jodie there, and I think maybe spoke briefly, asked her what she shot, and that's the last time I saw Jodie.
Jodie went to John Vancise's apartment around 8 o'clock that night to view a tape of a surprise birthday party he had thrown for her weeks before.
Well, we watched the video, and then after the video was over, we talked about a few things, talked about my daughter who's in Italy this summer, and then we talked about water skiing this week, and then from there on, when she went down the stair steps and went around the back and got in her car and went home. That's the last I seen of her.
When Jodie came home from Vancise's, she tried to reach a friend, Kelly Torgeson, in Mississippi. Her husband, Todd, took the phone call. Todd said Jodie sounded happy, even giddy, speaking mainly about the weekend of water skiing with her friends. And that would be the last time the Torgesons ever heard from Jodie.
So I guess what we can take from this is that the timeline is even more messed up. And what John Vancise says even makes less of a sense, because in my eyes, that would mean that the whole birthday party viewing session must have taken like 5 or 10 minutes according to my logic. So once again, a very choppy timeline. I suggest everyone who wants to get like the super nitty-gritty details of the timeline, you could definitely look into this case yourself and make your own conclusion, guys. So yep, John Vancise maintains that this was in fact the case and that he saw Jodie at his place the night before she disappeared, and that she left and went home and all was well. He also claims that the last thing he remembers is being waken up by his walking partner, LaDonna Woodruff, the next morning at 6 a.m. to go for their morning walk. Now, according to them, LaDonna and John Vancise, they walked around the area of John's home from 6:30 a.m. to approximately 7:30 a.m. However, this is disputed by two people. Jodie's producer, Amy Coons, who says John called the TV station at 7:20 a.m. demanding to know where Jodie was, and by a co-worker of John's who said they met at a local convenience store at 8 a.m. in that morning, and John was already acting weird in the convenience store, saying that Jodie was gone. Also, John made some suspicious statements to the media. When a news crew interviewed him that morning, he said, quote, "I was the last person to see her alive. She's gone." And he made this statement on, like, when she was missing only for like a few hours. On another occasion, a few weeks later, he told a local reporter that he had, quote, passed a lie detector test with flying colors, end quote, and was going to go celebrate with his friends by drinking a keg of beer. John Vancise has never been officially charged with a crime in regards to Jodie or her disappearance. However, he remains a person of interest with the Mason City PD. He has been brought before two separate grand juries in this case, most recently in 2015 when he was told to appear in person to provide a complete set of finger and handprints. In 2017, Iowa police obtained a search warrant for the GPS systems for two of John's old cars, neither of which he owned at the time Jodie vanished, indicating that law enforcement think there is a chance John visited the potential Jodi Huisentruit's burial site after the fact. In the summer of 2019, it was announced that John Vancise was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and faced an uncertain future. And prior to him getting Alzheimer's, he had stated publicly he wanted to move back to Iowa because he was living outside of Iowa to, quote, clear his family's name and to find Jodie. So yeah, that's a long spiel about this guy, but yeah, I'm glad that I got it out of here. Your thoughts on this guy, man, John Vancise?
Yeah. So, I have some thoughts, and I guess let me ask before I go into too long of a spiel.
Of course.
Should I save kind of the good stuff about him for the end in terms of like kind of the really deep thoughts, or just
Dude, just go at it,
yeah,
man. I feel
go
like
at
this
it.
guy.
Let me think about it. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because when I see this guy, I mean, first of all, his pictures are sort of interesting. His hands are all over. I mean, everybody female in front of him. Maybe that's just everybody being friendly too. I mean, some of it's cultural and stuff, but it's a little weird. Let me. I did actually have a couple questions that I thought about, especially when you gave the summary now of him. So when he was supposedly showing that video of the party, which, like, just so everybody kind of understands, this all happened before. I mean, this happened before YouTube. This happened like almost 10 years before YouTube, kind of. At least what YouTube even became. So, like, even a video camera back then was kind of still a big deal. You know what I mean? Like, it was like the big camcorder thing half the time. Big box and big shoe box on your shoulder. But it's kind of funny, like to think, like, she's on TV all the time. Why would she give a shit about your video of her party, right? She does TV for a living. Okay, but whatever. Was his live-in girlfriend? Well, so the girlfriend's live-in? Is that like
no one knows about
yeah.
the girlfriend? I feel I would highly question if the girlfriend was even a real thing.
Yeah, that me too. Because that it's funny that she comes up after the fact, and he kind of, I think I even have this in the notes where he's like, "Well, I have a girlfriend, so I wouldn't even be." And it's like, "Whoa, dude! Like what a stupid thing to say." I have a girlfriend, so of course I could never do a sex crime or a kidnapping or a murder. And it's like, you might as well just said you have socks. You know what I mean? It has no relevance to anything. And just because someone has a girlfriend doesn't. It almost seems damning to me that he says that. That he's like, well, obviously I had no lust in my heart. My lust was already being expended somewhere else. I mean, that's kind of strange thing to say. There's a lot of cringe in his behavior. What's going on?
Touchy. He's very touchy, dude.
Very touchy. He's very. There was one other thing before I get on to kind of crucifying him. Um, let me let me just say it is interesting, the GPS thing. I had to wonder about that because obviously my life has spanned sort of these technologies, um, and so I always wonder like one of his cars was a 1999 car. I don't even know of any GPS technology except for maybe in like a luxury car, unless there was stuff hidden in like black boxes. You know what I mean? Like I know cars do have black boxes for collisions and stuff that try to measure like how fast you were going and things like that. But like that stuff I don't think was built into like a 1999 anything. Probably not even like a 1999 Cadillac. You know what I mean? So I don't.
I don't know
Yeah.
about the tech there.
That it seems weird, right? So I'm like, what the heck could they even be? I almost think, I almost wonder if that was like a bluff. You know what I
Right.
mean? To kind of scare them, because and even the second car, which was like what, 2006 or something. I mean, even then, GPS was not affordable to almost everybody. So once again, I don't really know. It's such a strange thing. When I saw that source, I had to go down and track the article and look it up and say like, what are they saying here? But it doesn't look like anything came out of it. To your point, he's essentially gone mentally now. I mean, if he's even still alive, I didn't see any updates on that, but he's essentially not going to ever be held criminally responsible, right? So if he did do it, well, we may never know. But then, like he couldn't even really go to trial, right? They would just table it, and then he'd die. And
You
then,
know, you know what was
yeah.
really interesting to me, that prior to him conceiving Alzheimer's, and I think like shortly prior to him conceiving Alzheimer's, he was like, I'll go back I'll go back to Iowa and I'll be the one who finds Jodie. I'll clear the
He's gonna-
family's name. He's the
He's
one.
gonna OJ it, huh? He's gonna OJ. I'm gonna find the real killer. Yeah. Which, by the way, that was the other part. I was on mute, but I laughed out loud when you were like, he's like, I was the last one to see her alive. We're like, wait, who says she's dead? Oh, I mean, I was the last one to see her. I mean, you know what I mean? That was
Hours after she's reported missing.
it's like that whole thing. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff that sends off some pretty big alarm bells. I will say, like, there's some of it sets off alarm bells. I remember when I was a younger guy, I would see like guys, in that age range. I mean, I guess I'm kind of I'm his age now that he was when he was doing that stuff. So maybe I have an even better perspective now that I've kind of lived through life and kind of know it at my age what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. Maybe with how you come at somebody who's just supposed to be a friend and not a prospective romantic partner. But yeah, I remember when I was younger, when I was like a lot closer to your age or younger, I would have like these professors that would act kind of cringy and desperate like that, and kind of trying a little too hard to like be naughty and whatever. You know what I mean? I kind of roll my eyes, and now I think I'm even a little more alarmed with the way this guy was acting with because now that I kind of know how some of these stalker behaviors work. And then the other thing is, as a guy, sometimes you realize how you're driven by testosterone and hormones, and how they kind of make you sort of push you towards bad choices in life. And there's a lot of cringe behavior, I think, that everybody does. The guy version of it is like some of this kind of puppy dog stuff he's doing. You know what I mean? Where he's like, oh, you want to see my video of you? Oh, you want to go on my boat? You want to? And he's like just really trying to basically dominate this lady's time. I mean, I don't know why he's not asking her out. It's almost like he's trying to like convince her, and convince. By the way, that was the other interesting thing was it does sound like, despite all of his sort of official like, oh, she's just a daughter to me. Oh, but you see, I already had a girlfriend, and all these like, objections he keeps raising about how like he could never be the one. But meanwhile, like he's telling other guys like, stay away from her, she's mine. And then trying to like deny it later or wave it off. Yeah, it's just I won't beat this too much longer. It seems pretty there's like a lot of warning signs and like prospective stalker behavior. That being said, I mean, until we get down to the breakdown, I will say that on the surface, he could still just be another one of like, several dorky or stalker guys attracted to someone who is pretty much the most attractive person probably on TV in their town.
Yeah.
Maybe. You know what I mean?
And I also want to step in that, yeah, I wouldn't jump so fast to accuse John Vancise to be definitely the killer, because one detail that I forgot to mention earlier on in the podcast is that there was a handprint, I believe, of a male's hand. Well, we think it's a male's hand left on that red Mazda Miata, and that handprint is suggested to belong to the abductor, but it was not matched to Jan Vancise's handprint. Also he provided DNA. He was asked to provide all of this scrap, and they never ever connected him to the case. So it's interesting to me. Once again, I would probably say that he's not connected to the disappearance of Jodi at all, to be honest, because, well, that's what I would say. But the fact that police can't seem to let him go, and 20 years after the fact still ask him to go to like court hearings, you know what I mean? That's what keeps me interested in this angle, is that police doesn't let him go. What do you make of that fact that police just can't let him go 20 years after?
And that's what I almost wonder. That almost makes me wonder. Let's suppose, like, you know, the once it's going rewinding a second to the wife of the police ex-police chief that sent in the journal entries.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the real goal. So maybe the goal wasn't necessarily to say we did it, the police did it, or the town did it. Maybe the goal was more to say, like, well, the town is complicit, or the town didn't do a good enough job, or, you know what I mean? There's something where, like, maybe she just hypothetically is saying, oh, this other person did it. We had enough evidence. We just didn't push it hard enough because in 1996 or when it was a good old boys club, you know, and they just, you know, that John guy, he was buddies, and, you know, everybody liked his boat, and they weren't gonna mess it up, you know, for this lady that wasn't even from around here, and, you know, who knows where she went. That's kind of likely. And by the way, I'm not justifying that point of view. I'm saying maybe that hypothetically could have been the attitude back when this happened, and then obviously attitudes change. People, you know, new people come to the job, etc.
Of course. Also, I think we have to talk about the fact that John's proposed timeline doesn't add up. John said that in the evening she came to his home to watch that birthday party video. It's not known if she really did go there. To my understanding, it was never proven. And I think the timeline doesn't really work because Jodi called a friend from Mississippi at 8 p.m. and she told that friend's husband who picked up, yo, tell her to call me. I just want to talk, but only if she is home before 10 p.m. So it means that after 10, don't call me, because after 10, I'm probably going to be getting ready to go to bed because I have to wake up and go to work at 4 a.m. in the morning. So it's like, would she really go there and still spend the evening watching the video and like drink potentially with John Vancise? Like, that was a speculation that it's hard to believe that she was on the phone with the friend's husband. She was very specific about the time when she would be not available to talk anymore. And that was just 2 hours, not 2 hours. Actually, that was an hour and 30 minutes. So she only had an hour and 30 minutes of, like, let's say, hangout time. Would she really go out of her way to get to John Vancise's place and watch that stuff? I mean, who knows? Like, maybe, but it was, once again, it was a Monday morning, you know what I mean? A Monday evening. Like, Monday evening, you're probably resting at home. You don't want to go out to all of these places, especially when you wake up so early, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that's why a lot of restaurants are closed on Monday nights. That's like the weekend. You know, that's like the Sunday for restaurant owners is Monday, because that's when people don't like, yeah, you're perfect. Like, they just started their week, right? Who wants to go you want to keep going on a good stretch of sleep. It's funny because I'm trying to even think. So she would go to bed at like what 10, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody, I mean, well, later, right? So I mean, the friend. Do we have any idea if the friend was like in the same time zone or not? I'm just trying to think like
Mississippi and Iowa. Mississippi and Iowa, are they in the same time zone? I think so.
I think so.
So.
Yeah, I think they are. So wow. So she wasn't even getting like a ton of sleep already.
They are.
Like, you're right. Like she couldn't carve into that more, right? I mean, that doesn't make sense. So
Doesn't make any sense.
It's
well, it could be just John lying that he was the last. There's a chance that John didn't kill Jodie, but he lied about that. Like if he lied,
he just maybe he just wants to be important.
Yes.
Wants a little like Munchausen syndrome. Yeah.
Yeah, he could easily just want to be important. Just because he lied, which I kind of lean towards that he did, doesn't mean that he killed her. Just because he lied doesn't necessarily implicate that he killed her. And if he killed her, because for all we know currently, a random person snatched her up. So, dude, this is like one of the last things I want to do on the podcast today, and I want you to look, dude, dude, maybe this is a good psychological evaluation, okay? And everyone who's watching this on the YouTube channel, you could definitely glance right now. This is the last thing I want to do. Look, this is the party. This is the party that John Vancise threw for Jodie 2 weeks before she disappeared. So this is happening 2 weeks before she disappeared. So would a man who's acting like this here, then lifting her up like this, bringing her to the camera, dancing with her, right? 2 weeks later, he would snatch her up violently, leave all of this stuff down, car keys left, everything's left, would snatch her up in a white van potentially that apparently he didn't own, and get her out of here to one of the other directions, kill her, manage to come back home by 6 a.m. So managed to come home, let's say maybe an hour after the fact or 30 minutes after the fact, meet up with his walking partner, go for a walk, already called the department, already talked to the news people just hours after this violent abduction and murder, and he'd be like, yeah, I was the last one to see her alive. She's gone. I just killed her like a few hours ago, but don't tell the cops, you know what I mean? Would that situation kind of be like that? I feel like he was a goofball, but I don't think it makes any sense. Like, because he was all over the place. He was talking to his coworkers about Jodie in a convenience store. He called Jodie's producer. He talked to the media. He talked to the walking partner. He talked to police. He talked with everybody on the same morning. I kind of suspect that he just wanted to feel important. I don't really suspect that he could have done it within an hour and then fabricate this massive lie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the thought I had even was the timing, I think, locks it, or doesn't lock it, makes it real hard to, unless he's a complete psychopath, right? Unless he's like either done this before or he's just perfectly, horribly suited for murdering people and then pretending like he didn't do anything. But okay, regardless, there's signs of a struggle, right? Like all these other cases we've done, there's been cases where like, they think maybe they got threatened with a gun or something. There was some way to get them into the car without literally having to drag somebody kicking and screaming. The police think she was drag kicking and screaming, or, that's like literally what the sort of set of clues are. Why doesn't this guy have marks all over him?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Try dragging a cat or a dog without, or any kind of much smaller animal than a human into a car when it doesn't want to go. You know what I mean? Without special tools like a leash and those things animal control has. So like try to do it with a person. Fingernails, right? I mean, fingernails are like the number one thing people look at with murder suspects and rape suspects, right? Besides, like, obviously the other DNA clues inside the person, would be, yeah, like just looking under the fingernails. Does the person have marks all over their face? Do they have marks on their arms? Do they have marks? Do they have bruises in their shins and their arms? Yeah.
Real quick, and then come back home 1 hour later and go for a walk and implicate yourself on purpose into the case.
Which, but I mean, yeah, go for a walk. By the way, I mean, you already had your workout, right? I mean, not that you wouldn't pretend, but you would be exhausted. I mean, unless somebody's doing jujitsu workouts a few times a week, and they know how to like subdue somebody, and not break a sweat too much. I don't. Yeah, it doesn't. You know what I mean? I think you might be exhausted after trying to just single-handedly do that. Now, I guess that would be the question: is could somebody like him create a conspiracy? And by conspiracy, I don't mean, some kind of grand thing. I mean, like, team up with somebody.
Maybe. I really.
It doesn't.
Yeah, to me personally, I'm just gonna leave it at that. That he seemed like a goofball who just wanted to be in the spotlight,
and who didn't want to share. Who didn't like sharing. So I guess in terms of like, there have been like serial killers and serial rapists and stuff who like have conspired with other people, and that's their whole thing. And but yeah, I guess to your point, that doesn't seem to fit the profile of this guy.
Yeah. And then I guess my conclusion would be that it was probably, the way I see it, most likely a random stalker who, because also when you think about the theories, how realistic it is for someone to randomly abduct a female at around, let's say, 4:30 a.m. in the morning, like in this not that well, like fairly sparsely, right? The word is populated area. Like there's not a lot of people living here. So to just randomly abduct someone like that violently is, I think, also a little unrealistic. That it was a random event. I definitely think that her abduction was pre-planned. And I think that someone seen her on TV and decided to abduct her and then killed her later on. But I don't think it was John Vancise. I feel like it could have been actually some of the previous people that we talked about. Tony Jackson, for instance, I feel like could have done it. I think maybe even that Dirk Jablonski individual could have done it. Thomas Corscadden, the creepy dude who said in court that he knew that Jodie was dead, could have done it potentially, I think, in my opinion. You know what I mean? I don't really think the police was involved as well. I'll just leave it at that, dude, this week. That I think that not a random, but like someone either from the guys that we mentioned previously or someone completely unknown to this case has kidnapped and killed her. Maybe a stalker who has been stalking her for a while. Maybe remember that black pickup that was following her on a few occasions. Maybe that driver, someone, because she was getting stalked. She was a famous person locally, and someone abducted her and killed her. But I think the whole thing here is that, do we think John Vancise did it? And as much as I've looked into it, I don't really think that John Vancise killed her. I think he was just a goofball, to my understanding,
Yeah, I mean, it's such a weird thing. I mean, the one thing it does bring up is, I think sometimes when people do pick this particular line of work, and I think people are more aware now, right? Because now, like, just think when she did this was kind of the only way to kind of do like what everybody does now on TikTok and, all the social media apps where someone can become famous. But back then, like, that didn't exist, other than America's Funniest Home Videos or stuff. There wasn't really a good way quite yet for sort of run-of-the-mill people to become famous. But then when people do, they don't really ever, there was not the awareness like there is now of the kind of stalking that celebrities, and let's face it, she is a celebrity, right? I mean, she's not famous. She wasn't famous across the country, but she was famous locally. People don't realize how much stalking goes on. And then, every once in a while, you would hear this weird news story like, David Letterman finally sees his stalker in court again for this, the fifth time or whatever it is. And you're like, what? David Letterman is a stalker? And it's like, oh no, they do. Yeah, no, for sure. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be that the person has to be so great looking or so famous or so whatever. With this stalking stuff, and it's a fascinating topic that I'll just really save it for another time. It's worth pointing out that this is a good case where there was a lot of warning signs, a lot of weird phone calls, and just, I mean, it seems clear she had more than one stalker. Some maybe not that serious, and some pretty serious. It's interesting to think of like that isn't really something that they even really teach you in journalism school or whatever, whatever she went to study for this. I don't think it was something that people really realized, and I don't necessarily think this was a consequence she planned for, nor should she really should have had to. But it is interesting because it's like presumably people do jobs like this that are in front of the public because they do want some amount of attention and kind of positive fan interaction and we just like a comedian tells jokes for people to laugh at them and enjoy that. I think that's why people do this job. I don't know that they know about this sort of scary part where now all these people see your face all the time and they think they know you and they think they love you and they think, you know what I mean? And then pretty soon they're looking up facts about you and they're coming out of the blue right at you. So in the case of this John guy, okay, you know him and you used to live in the same building or whatever. But imagine like how many more people felt just like this guy did and didn't even have that entree. Yeah. And then what if they're not even as civilized as some of the people we've talked about today?
Yeah, totally. And I feel like that was the case here. So, dude, I think it was a good show. I think once again, unless you have anything else that you want to add, yeah.
Yeah, I'll just tie it up. I mean, because I think this is a perfect time to wrap it up. Yeah, I mean, just in terms of all the theories, I'm still kind of like, oh, that's a tough one, man. I think I'm 60-40, 60 random, other, say the 60 is not John and the 40 is John or somebody just like him.
Right.
In her life, make over you will with it. I'm trying to stay on the legal side of not accusing anybody of anything officially, but yeah, it seems his behavior is pretty weird. I can't match the logistics, like you said, the timing and everything, and some of the more extreme aspects with his behavior afterwards, unless this guy should have been like, an assassin for the CIA and just, wasted his life doing something else. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's very bizarre, but awesome case, man.
Yeah, no, we have to thank the audience members for this one. Yeah, for me, I can't even do the percentages because like I just can't even like accurately pinpoint what I think. I just think that someone snatched her up, and I don't think it was John. That's where I'm gonna leave it at because I don't want to say some percentages that I might rethink later on. So, anyways, guys, please leave your thoughts in the comment section. I'm pretty sure this case is definitely going to generate some opinions, and we'll see you on the next week's case. And for now, just stay safe and peace out.